Chapter 2. How are animals alike and different? You can find all sorts of animals in a pond, from slippery bullfrogs to delicate dragonflies. Some of the animals look similar. Others, such as the bullfrog and dragonfly, look very different. Scientists group animals by how they are alike and by how they are different. They study their body structures and how they have young. Science vocabulary. My science vocabulary. Backbone. Classify. Invertebrate. Vertebrate. Classify. To classify is to place into groups based on characteristics. Scientists classify crabs in the same group as spiders. Backbone. A backbone is a string of separate bones that fit together to protect the main nerve cord in some animals. A cheetah's backbone bends when the cheetah runs. Vertebrate. A vertebrate is an animal with a backbone. A backbone helps many vertebrates walk, run, fly, jump, or swim. Invertebrate. An invertebrate is an animal without a backbone. A spiny lobster is an invertebrate. Grouping animals. Animals come in many shapes, sizes, and colors. How do scientists sort them? One way scientists classify or group animals is by their characteristics or features and behaviors. These crabs all have 10 legs and hard outer coverings. The iguanas have 4 legs and scaly skin. Classifying helps scientists better understand animals. One characteristic that scientists use to classify animals is whether or not an animal has a backbone. A backbone is a string of separate bones that fit together to protect the main nerve cord in some animals. The head and other bones are connected to the backbone. It helps the animal move. Animals with backbones are called vertebrates. The cheetah is just one kind of vertebrate. Catfish, tree frogs, king snakes, gulls, and bats are vertebrates too. Even though each kind of animal is very different from the other, they all have backbones in about the same location as the cheetahs. The backbone is part of a vertebrate's skeleton. Animals without backbones are called invertebrates. Some invertebrates, such as earthworms, have no skeleton at all. Others, such as clams, grow a protective shell on the outside of their bodies. Still others, such as lobsters and butterflies, grow a hard outer covering that is like an outside skeleton, but none has a backbone. Animals without backbones. You might think that vertebrates are the most common kinds of animals on Earth because you notice them more often. But most kinds of animals are invertebrates. Some live on land, while others live in water. Many are smaller than your fingertip, but some, such as the giant squid, are among the largest animals on Earth. Look at the animals in the photos on these pages. Each animal belongs to a different invertebrate group. How do the animals differ from one another? How are they alike? Of all the different kinds of invertebrates, most are insects. Scientists classify arthropods with 3 body sections and 6 legs attached to the middle section as insects. Most insects also have wings, antennae for sensing the environment, and eyes made up of several smaller ones. You might call all the insects on these pages bugs. People commonly do. Some insects even have bug in their names. The milkweed bug in the photo below is an insect. Scientists can use the milkweed bug's wings and mouth parts to classify it as a certain kind of insect. Fishes, amphibians, and reptiles. Fishes. Scientists classify animals as fish using 4 characteristics. Fishes are vertebrates that live in water and have fins, scales, and gills. Fishes use gills to take in oxygen from the water. Fishes take in water through their mouths. Then the water passes out over the gills. As the water passes over the gills, oxygen moves from the water into the fish's blood. Fishes can look very different from one another. A shark is a fish. Sharks have scales that are rough as sandpaper. You can see the slits where the water moves out over the gills. Most fishes are like the koi. Its scales feel slimy. It also has a covering over the gills, so you can't see the gills on the outside of the fish's body. Amphibians. Have you ever seen a frog or a toad? Frogs and toads are part of another group of vertebrates called amphibians. Newts and salamanders are also part of this group. A young amphibian lives in water and breathes with gills like a fish. Most amphibians then grow lungs and legs, and they can live on land. Toads and frogs look very similar. Why do scientists classify toads and frogs as different kinds of amphibians? Toads have shorter back legs. They walk or hop instead of jumping and swimming. Toad skin also feels drier, but they keep it wet by rubbing water from shallow pools or dew over their backs. And like frogs, toads have teeth, but only on the bottom jaw. Reptiles. You may have seen members of another group of vertebrates called reptiles. Snakes, turtles, and lizards are all reptiles. Alligators and crocodiles are reptiles too. Unlike fish and amphibians, reptiles mostly lay their eggs on land. Reptile eggs have a soft but tough shell that protects them. When the eggs hatch, the young reptiles look like their parents. They have lungs and breathe air. Reptiles have a covering of hard scales that is not slimy. Scales help keep their bodies from drying out. The scales also protect reptiles from other animals that may try to eat them. Scales can also help reptiles move. Birds and mammals. Birds. What do you notice about the vertebrates on this page? While they look very different, they both share certain characteristics. Scientists classify vertebrates with feathers, wings, and 2 legs covered with scales as birds. No other kind of animal has feathers. These help birds fly and stay warm. Birds puff out their feathers to trap air when they are cold. The trapped air next to their skin warms and help the birds stay warm. But not all birds fly. The feathers of a flying bird, such as an ibis, have a different structure than the feathers of a penguin, which doesn't fly. Mammals. Vertebrates that have hair or fur and make milk to feed their young are called mammals. You cannot always see the hair or fur on a mammal. Some mammals, such as whales, lose their hair soon after they are born. Most mammals take care of their young after they are born. Female mammals make milk for their young until the young are old enough to eat other foods. Mammals, too, are very different from one another. Some have long trunks, some live in the ocean, and some can fly. Scientists use many characteristics and behaviors to classify mammals. Animal life cycles. Scientists observe animals' life cycles, or how they grow and reproduce. Most kinds of animals have young by laying eggs. In some kinds of animals, the adult dies very soon after the eggs are laid. In other kinds of animals, the adult lives a long time and can reproduce many times before it dies.
Life cycles have different stages or parts. Many insects have a 4-stage life cycle in which the animal looks very different at each stage. Look at the life cycle of the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. The adult lays eggs about 10 days after it breaks out of the pupa. It dies after it lays the eggs, but the eggs hatch and start the life cycle over again.
Frogs and other amphibians go through a life cycle where the animal looks different at different stages. Trace the life cycle diagram with your finger. Adult amphibians can live for many years. They can lay eggs at least once each year at a certain time for that kind of amphibian. Most amphibians hatch from eggs in the water. Young amphibians live in water and breathe with gills. Their bodies change as they grow into adults. They grow legs, and their tails may shrink. Most amphibians also grow lungs. With these changes, amphibians can live on land. The life cycle of mammals is very different from that of insects and amphibians. Most mammals do not lay eggs. The young develop inside the mother and are born alive. Mammals can live for many years and reproduce many times. The young cannot take care of themselves. They drink milk from their mother until they can eat other foods. The young grow and change, becoming larger and stronger. Many times, the young learn behaviors from the parents, such as how to find food and how to survive on their own. Over time, the young become adults. Then they may reproduce to make more of their own kind. Clues from fossils. Many kinds of animals no longer live on Earth, but scientists can still classify them by observing their fossils. Fossils are the traces of living things that lived long ago. A fossil can be part of a living thing, such as a bone or a tooth. It can also be a mark, such as a footprint, that formed as mud turned into rock over millions of years. The characteristics in fossils can show how animals from long ago are similar to those that live today. The backbone of the fossil in the big photo shows that this animal was a vertebrate. What other traits shown in the fossil give hints about how the animal could be classified? Fossils tell scientists what the environment was like long ago. Look at the big photo. What does the environment look like? In this area of Indiana, scientists have found fossils of huge trees that could grow only in very warm, swampy environments. They have also found fossils of animals that could live only in warm, shallow oceans. What do these fossils tell scientists about this area? They are clues that the environment here has changed over time. Now the area is forests and farmland with warm summers and cold winters. Millions of years ago, it was covered with shallow ocean water, and the weather was very warm all year long. National Geographic: Life on the Reef. A coral reef is like a small underwater island. Invertebrates called coral form a reef as they grow on the ocean floor. The Great Barrier Reef, located off the coast of Australia, is the world's largest coral reef. Scientists explore the reef to observe and study the animals. Sometimes they even find kinds they haven't seen before. Many different kinds of animals live on a coral reef. Scientists use cameras and other tools to observe the animals. Animals can be hard to find because they hide in the coral and live in holes left when coral dies. Scientists try to classify any new kinds of animals they haven't seen before by comparing their characteristics with groups of living things they already know. Conclusion: classifying animals helps scientists to study and better understand them. Scientists observe animals' characteristics. Invertebrates are animals that do not have backbones, and vertebrates are animals with backbones. Insects are the largest group of invertebrates. Vertebrates include fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Some animals reproduce by laying eggs, while others have young that are born alive. Fossils tell about plants, animals, and the environment of long ago. Big idea. Animals can be classified into groups based on their characteristics and behaviors.